Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our webinar from InfoTrack. I'm Sing from InfoTrack. First of all, I would like to say good morning to everyone who joining us. As you can see that for this round of webinar, we never use team live. We will try to use normal team. The reason why that we use normal team is because that we would like you to participate during the discussion. So feel free to raise up your hand and maybe that I will address your name, then you will raise your question over there. And of course, that you may also put in your question in the chat box that I will compile over there. So today we're going to talk more about data center. A word that actually is not really new for all of us that in IT. However, there are some changes for data center due to AI is getting more and more popular already, and I am glad. And we are glad that today we are able to invite Mr. Haslan, that he has a lot of experience in data center over the years to share his thought and his idea and definitely his knowledge on data center, where what is the areas that we have to take note and what is the opportunities or even challenges that we may face on coming new features. So without further ado, I would like to pass the floor to Mr. Haslan in order that he can start his sharing to everyone in the floor right now. So Mr. Haslan, can you hear me?
Yes, thanks, Sing.
That's good. So we'd like to pass the floor to you.
Thank you. First of all, good morning, everyone. I want to say thank you to InfoTrack for inviting me on this webinar. It's really good for me to share my knowledge with you guys. So I'll start off with a short introduction about myself. If you can see my screen, I've only been in the data center environment for the last 7 years, since 2019. There are a few things about me that is very relevant to the topic of the webinar today. One, I would say, I do not come from an IT background. I actually graduated with a degree in architecture. So I learned how to design buildings, and I learned about statutory requirements and building codes. And it helps me in my career pivots. So in terms of a career pivot, IT has always been my hobby. My elder brother, who is now a chief information security officer for GovTech in Singapore, I supported him in terms of hardware knowledge, whereas he did all of the software and programming back in uni. I also did quite a bit of programming myself. In 1995, for example, I was with the Mara Institute students who were in Temple University in Philadelphia. So we used a lot of MRRC, and if you use MRRC back then, you would have learned how to use chatbots. And if you think about how AI has progressed the chatbot now, you can actually use Cloud to reply to your WhatsApp chat messages as well. So it becomes your personal assistant. So in terms of my own education and my own certifications, I value a provider like InfoTrack, for example, because a lot of my data center certifications, as well as understanding cybersecurity principles, these are provided by training service providers in Singapore, as well as overseas. So, for example, I am already a certified data center design consultant according to TIA 942, and also an internal auditor for data centers according to TIA 942. So that's just a brief introduction about myself. I will go now to the actual presentation. Give me a minute. Okay. So welcome to the data center pivot and what IT teams must prepare for next. So I'll give you two separate point of views. one which is a practitioner point of view. Having seen my CV earlier, you would have noticed that I worked for a very big cloud provider or hyperscaler, Microsoft, I think for the greater part of 3.5 to almost 4.5 years, depending on whether I was from a PMC, a project management company, or whether I was a full-time employee with Microsoft itself. And next, I will actually share with you, because part of my CV that you saw just now, I am a strong innovator. So I like to always push and see what I can achieve for myself. That is the reason why I shared with you a lot of my data center certifications. And yeah, so let's begin. So for part one on operational realities, why do you think this is necessary? So I guess a lot of you are coming already from IT infrastructure background. You understand servers, but you may not necessarily be responsible, or you may not know what are the physical layer and facilities that are required, especially when you scale up. So from a simple IT server room within your office to it's no longer an IT server room within a data center. Those are the things that you need to understand. What I see in the industry, because I do training as well for vocational high school students as well as polytechnic students here in Indonesia. A lot of them do not understand the gaps. And what I mean by the gaps is a lot of us, we are very task oriented. So we are very good at doing our binary tasks. And the binary task is, of course, a logical task. You may not necessarily understand the physical gaps that you will experience when you scale up. So in that, what I'm talking about is the power architecture. What I'm talking about is the thermal management, especially now with AI, you have liquid cooling to chips, and understanding that in reality, your IT server room no longer needs to operate at 18 to 21 degrees, because ASHRAE revisions on understanding how to deal with the massive heat loads that come from the production racks, the GPUs. These are really important for you to understand, because sometimes you have an alarm that goes off and you do not understand why that particular alarm goes off. And more importantly, physical safety. So on physical safety, you have life protection systems, you have fire protection systems, you have fire suppression systems. And these are also important because especially when the fire suppression system goes off, you shouldn't be in the white space, or you shouldn't be in the data hall. And of course, it's not as simple as just limiting your access control to your IT server rooms. There are a lot of physical layers that you need to go through, for example. So when I was working for Microsoft, we were not allowed to bring even a USB stick into the production area where the racks were, even to update firmware, for example. So you do understand that it presents a limitation, especially if you're doing firmware upgrades. You need to be able to find a different source. And of course, you understand that this particular different source comes from your actual laptop that you bench onto that particular IT rack or that particular server rack. And if you do have either a wireless or a wired connection, you would still be able to update that firmware without having to bring a USB stick. So why is it important for you to understand this in Malaysia? I'm sure you all know that in the news, there has been a specific mention on Malaysia, where you face issues with power, you face issues with water. And of course, in terms of environment, you have a lot of humidity. A lot of Southeast Asian countries also face this problem. But again, understanding the ASHRAE codes for the ambient temperature and the internal temperature for your IT equipment is necessary. You also understand how you need to understand when you are requesting TNB, for example, for a 132 kV substation, and you are asking for anything from 100 megawatts to 1 gigawatt of power. You need to understand what are the limitations in terms of the local utility providers. And it's not just about power and water, it's also about, I would say, network or connectivity infrastructure. So on network and connectivity infrastructure, it is good that Malaysia has, I would say, quite sufficient terrestrial fiber network. But again, in terms of geopolitical boundaries, each state within Malaysia determines how their network and connectivity fiber runs, terrestrial fiber runs within each state, and how it runs between states. So these are the things that you need to understand, right? So when you talk about from getting it after fitting out or after construction, what do you have to do to get ready in order for you to actually begin day one operations? So you always have to take it backwards. You have to understand how the site is being prepared, which like what I mentioned, TNB. You also need to understand calculations, especially in terms of how airflow is managed, and how are the racks configured, or how are the racks deployed, right? Because you no longer have just one single rack, or you have maybe 8 to 10 racks within your IT server room anymore. You were talking about at least 600 to 800 racks, and these are just production racks outside of your network and connectivity racks, outside of your physical security and access control racks, your CCTV. This is also outside of your AV. So you have different circuits coming into the data center. You have network cables, and you also have SIP trunks. So again, depending on the infrastructure of each particular state, you may have to apply for SIP or PSTN or ISDN for your ISP for your SIP trunk. And how are you actually going to deploy and configure? So what I did in terms of my own preparation from getting ready to day one was that I would always choose the easiest ones that we can deploy first. So obviously VoIP would be my first, because it's actually quite straightforward for you to deploy VoIP. And with tools like Teams now, you have a unified communication tool where it's easy for you if you want to troubleshoot any of the other deployments that you have to do. So for network and connectivity, these are usually in collaboration with an IT managed service company, because they will assist you to deploy all of the configs and make sure that your cybersecurity layer, and in terms of L2 aggregate switches, these are prepared. And of course, now you even have zero trust network, which is applicable to both the security, the voice, as well as the network rack deployments. And you need to work with external vendors who will advise you on how you would config and deploy. So how I started out to be a TIA 942 design consultant and internal auditor. In 2018, I signed up for a course, which is the CDCP course. This is a certified data center professional course. It's actually the most basic layer. I do know now that they've introduced one even simpler layer below it, which is the DCFC, Data Center Foundations course. But to be honest, you can jump straight into the CDCP. Maybe those who are interested can contact InfoTrack on how long this course will take and what is the minimum passing requirement that you would require. So for me, I went through 3 days of offline. So I actually had to go to a training center and literally go back to school and learn about architecture, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, even ELV or extra low voltage, in order for me to pass my CDCP. I was fortunate because I managed to pass it the first time. So yeah, I would really recommend that for those who are interested, please contact InfoTrack to understand how you're actually going to prepare yourself if you are interested to work in a data center environment. Any questions so far?
I think so far there's a good response from the floor saying that it's understandable. So maybe that Mr. Hasana, you can continue your sharing to us.
Sure. Okay, thank you. Yeah, going back to the focus on Malaysia, like I said, so by the end of this year, Malaysia is projected to have 2.1 gigawatts. Ironically enough, that is probably due to the fact that a lot of you have TikTok accounts and content creators and content providers. So even people who don't understand, who only have a mobile phone and who have a camera and produce content, it's us guys who are in the IT infrastructure industry to be able to translate that, because back in the past, maybe you would be only limited to a 30-second video, and then now you can actually create content which is past the 30-second mark. That has got to do with a lot of video compression advancement and as well as transmission. So the one good thing that I mentioned is that Malaysia in each particular state has already started to develop and laid the terrestrial fiber infrastructure. And at the same time, there's a lot of investments that are coming in, both in terms of a subsea cable and in terms of a cable landing station, where Malaysia is keen to attract the data gravity away from Singapore, because at the moment, every single Southeast Asian country, when it is to be routed to the US, it has to go through a data center in Singapore before it goes to a data center in the US. So it is also critical for you to understand the infrastructure layer at layer 1 and even beyond layer 1, because that is terrestrial fiber. As I mentioned, that's you have a different set of network layers at the cable landing station, at the internet exchange point, and then the superhighway is, of course, the subsea cable. This, interestingly enough, will actually change some of your job requirements, and I've seen it in Singapore, and I've seen it also in the rest of the Southeast Asian countries, because a lot of the IT guys who were ex-telco, so if you worked in a telco company before, you're used to deploying Ericsson, Nokia, and then later on Huawei and ZTE. this will help you a lot because you will already have a very good understanding of IPv4 and IPv6 protocols. So the key there for me is for you to have a good project management background, and I know InfoTrack also provides some certifications regarding project management. So I'm sure some of you IT professionals already have ITIL, or you have network certifications like CCNA, or you have cybersecurity certifications. It's not difficult to pivot since you already have a basic understanding, like I mentioned earlier, because ITIL is still, well, depending on whether you're talking about V4 or V5, ITIL is still very much binary based. So you carry out your tasks in a logical manner. But the one thing that we are never taught and never prepared for is when you have a breakdown, and it's always a last minute breakdown. So in terms of my own example, when I was preparing for this webinar today and I switched on my laptop and then suddenly my screen decides to go blur on me. So immediately I had to figure out that I needed an external monitor. I had to reconfigure my space right now. So I'm supposed to be in my study, but I'm not in my study. I'm actually now in my living room. So yeah, it's Murphy's Law. Those are the things that when you are faced with a binary and a logical task, you're almost always never prepared for. It's good for you to consider an agile methodology, because when you do have an agile methodology, you do anticipate and you have already prepared yourself when there is a sudden change of plans, when you think that you're not ready for it. It helps. It really helps. So you need to be able to pull things together and maintain your availability, maintain your uptime in terms of your network, and most importantly to the end users or the customers is your service level agreements. Any questions so far?
Yeah, Mr. Haslan. Actually, there's a question from the floor from Mr. Victor. The question sounds like, how about those professionals who don't have IT background, as like Mr. Victor? So Mr. Victor actually worked as a finance accountant. So where this pivot, instead of that only relate to IT personnel, is there any program that maybe you have in mind that can suggest to Mr. Victor where who may not be involved in IT professional?
Right. I really like that question because at the moment I'm also in a pre-seed startup funding stage. So in terms of a finance professional, I would say consider your different development types. So whatever industry that you are currently in, and understanding that you do have financial models built into it. In reality, every single asset class, including data center asset class, they have the same basic financial models. The only difference is that probably in terms of realizing when you actually arrive at day one and when you actually start receiving revenue, these are some of the primary variables, because some data center operators build to operate themselves, and their revenue model comes from a subscription model on the AI or on the cloud. And some data centers actually become the landlord. So it's like you have an office building and you are actually leasing it to tenants. So you need to manage your tenants in order for you to realize your revenue. So even if you don't have a data center background, For me, a guy in finance is really important because if you can understand the sensitivities when you are doing the financial modeling, because there's two very different scenarios in the two scenarios which I mentioned. So a data center operator who builds and operates himself, he looks at the long-term strategy. He looks at the NPV, what kind of investment that he puts in now for a data center versus what he will realize when his facility is 100% utilized. In contrast to a data center operator who builds and actually leases it out to a tenant, like ByteDance, for example, or even Google for that matter. Because then in terms of his financial model, he looks at the IRR and he looks at when his OPEX payback can be achieved within the shortest possible time. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you very much for your sharing. In fact, actually, that while Mr. Hassan has been sharing, right, actually that there's a lot of news that in Malaysia that data center is very happening. Like Microsoft is having their plan over here, or even the 2 years ago, Google also announced about 2 billion, close to 2 billion project that work with some that they will have their data center at nearby Sungai Mulu, Elmina areas. So definitely, beside IT professional will get benefit from that. But at the same time, others role like project managers, like what Mr. Hassan shared, or even some finance related business team, they will have a lot of opportunities that are coming up. So let's get ready for that. So over to you, Hassan, to continue your sharing.
Okay, thank you very much, Ing Seng. I will now start on part 2, which is AI and future proofing. Why I pay particular attention to this is because even in my data center career, even when I was working for Microsoft, I transitioned and I actually deployed GB300 NVL72 within an existing data center. So it was a retrofit. And again, the scale is very different. So if you're a network technician, for example, or if you're a network engineer, for example, you cannot imagine how many cables and how many patching that you have to do in one particular rack. The scale is easily 8 to 10 times more. So yeah, for me it was very important for me to become to have been part of that opportunity, because it really gave me a first-hand look at how AI is changing how we deploy our network as well as our production racks. So one of the important things is coming back to the first part of the webinar which I shared with you. When you talk about AI racks, they are very high density. They consume a lot of power, right? So in the past, where a typical rack is anywhere between 2.5 kilowatts to 3.5 kilowatts per rack, and then came the cloud providers, where you had Office 365, you had M365, you had Google Workspace, you had probably a lot of the Microsoft Office, which also runs on O365. This became, in the cloud era, this became 10 to 15 kilowatt per rack. And now with AI, where you're running Claude, where you're running Gemini, where you're running ChatGPT or OpenAI, these are now almost 10 times more. So that's 130. So how do you make sense of how do you maintain these racks, right? Because what used to be, for example, 10 racks, if you were operating at 11 kilowatt per rack, is now a single rack, right? Or even more than. So 130 kilowatts, if you're running 10 kilowatts, that's 13 racks. So you have the same heat coming out of one rack as compared to 13 racks before. And of course, you know that electricity and water doesn't mix very well. And you have a liquid that is now directly applied via cold plate or heat exchanger directly to the GPU, where in the past you would only consider airflow from the front of the rack to the rear of the rack, where you deploy containments like cold aisle containment, which is typical for legacy IT server rooms or IT deployment within data centers. You have a raised floor, you have a plenum underneath the raised floor to blow cold air into your cold aisle, and you would only be able to access the front of the rack through the cold aisle. So you'll be working on all of the patching and everything in the front of the rack within the cold aisle. And if you step out of that cold aisle, you face what we call either the hot aisle or the ambient temperature that is within the room. And this is typically around 30 degrees because the airflow is coming in from the middle of the cold aisle, going out to the back of the rack. And you don't want to be standing at the back of the rack too long because you feel that it's very hot. Now it's the reverse. Now you're actually bringing coolant directly onto the GPU, directly onto the chip. And again, as I mentioned, you have electronics, you have electrical connections, and you have water, or you have glycol, or depending on the type of medium that you use. So deionized water is one example, and then of course you have glycol, poly something glycol 25. And although they may say that a lot of these are inert, they do not. They have very high heat conductivity. Not principles. Properties. Yeah, that's the word for it. But you know, if it leaks, it can basically short circuit the entire rack, and probably even worse, it may even cause an electrical fire. So, part of the poll which I shared with you guys, the poll requires you to be able to answer whether you, for example, are dealing with tickets or service tickets, whether these are done manually, whether these are done automatically, or it's a mixture of both. Reason for this is, again, even when I started in the data center industry 7 years ago, I wasn't really sure what to expect and how to respond. So the industry exploded during COVID, literally, where everybody was forced to work from home, and you had a lot more meetings on Zoom or Teams, for example. So automatically, when you are not at your place of work, how do you deal with outages, right? And I'm pretty sure we've experienced that as well during COVID, where there were outages, or even when you have service interruptions to your app on Zoom or Teams. Sometimes you can't figure it out. You contact your IT guy in the office, and he tells you there's an issue even further upstream, right? So how do you consider AI to be able to assist you? So what AI Ops tries to do, and at this stage is still very much, I would say, prototyping, a lot of testing. You don't want to do a standard dashboard. So in your particular IT room, obviously you have displays which tells you about temperature, humidity, power, etc., etc. It tells you whether you have your fire suppression system deployed, and usually this is via strobe light, a red strobe light outside your IT server room, because it's hazardous for you to go inside when a fire suppression system is deployed. But the key is there's not enough people, right? Even globally in the US, and that's part of the reason why I say I train vocational high school and polytechnic students here in Indonesia, because out of Southeast Asia, Indonesia has the largest population. And in order to get the next layer ready, they have to be, they really have to understand a lot of the basics before they actually come and see a dashboard. Because the current generation may be different than my generation, may be even different than your generation, for example. The way that we look at interfaces, the way that we look at dashboards, the way that we respond, is it a question of, are we satisfied that there's an interface for us to understand what's going on without actually physically understanding what's going on, which was what I mentioned in the physical versus the logical gap. So it's not just dashboards. Dashboards tell you one thing, but at the end, at the back end, you can try to use AI to automate some of your daily tasks which you require, right? So if you, for example, if you do have a standard checklist that you are going around and checking all of your IT white spaces, how do you think AI can assist you in actually ticking all the boxes? So from a dashboard, how do you translate if everything is green, there's no alarm going off for that particular hour, AI automatically ticks all the check boxes for you. And most importantly, when there is an alarm or an error that is raised, and if you're not at your workstation, as I mentioned, and again, this may be a recurring theme. So your network administrator calls the IT guys who are on site, and all the IT guys or the network technicians who are on site, they swear that the server is on, but he can't ping the server, right? So how do you deal with such an alarm or such an error? Obviously, when some are not switched on properly, or they're not even switched on at all, then you can actually use robotic process automation to actually send out critical information why this particular server or why this particular piece of equipment is going into a failure loop, and it addresses how you are going to react to the emergency or the alert or the alarm in a much faster period of time. One of the other important uses of AI is that it actually allows you to predict. So now you see cloud, for example, or where in the case of the finance guy, I use cloud and I use Gemini Pro as well. In terms of predictive, so when I test a financial model or I test a business plan, even though I am not a business analyst or financial analyst, it gives me some level of confidence whether I want to have, I can decide whether I want to have 80%, 85%, 90% confidence level that my financial model and my business plan, and I can even ask the AI to give me negative feedback about it. So AI will also be able to criticize your initial thought process, short of you having to go up to the CFO and have a coffee with him and sit down with him for 2 hours, which of course he's not going to do because he's obviously occupied with a lot more executive tasks. Even things like prototyping and wireframing. So in a lot of the dashboards that I create, I try to mix it up. I use LLMs and I use JavaScript. For example, in my impact versus difficulty matrix, understanding my low-hanging fruits and seeing which ones are easy for me to deploy and not costing a lot of money. But of course, in a data center environment, it's quite predictable because your network traffic, when you are operating your network traffic, especially if you're an enterprise user, the enterprise user network traffic is very high during office hours, and it subsides during outside of office hours. So when you suddenly have a spike of high network traffic outside of office hours, the first thing that comes to mind is it a network attack? Is it a DDoS attack? Because this may be coming from overseas. That's the reason why it is outside of office hours. And training the AI model to be able to respond and understanding how to contain this. So it's you would consider it a virus, or you would consider it a germ, and you want your AI to be able to isolate this, or even in that respect, put up something which is a false mirror in order for the attack to think that it's actually attacking your system, but it's not attacking your system in reality, right? And of course, in terms of technician level, when you have your mechanical and electrical systems, you obviously do have preventive maintenance, which is your routine inspections and your checking. So sometimes when you're in the daily grind and you're doing the checklist, you don't even realize that, hey, my genset has already run 40,000 hours. I'm supposed to change my filter. I'm supposed to change the oil. So you can even use AI in your daily work to be able, or in the dashboard, in the dashboard itself, when it informs the critical environment technicians that we're 2 weeks away or we're 1 month away, right? Because in a country like Indonesia, import is not always easy, and everything has to go through Jakarta, for example. So in order for you to ship it outside of Jakarta, you need to be able to allow for at least 1 or 2 weeks for the critical spares to arrive on site, because you don't want to keep too much inventory. So this allows you to plan to get your PO out, to get your spares on time on site, and for you to be able to do your maintenance. And of course, last is the active load balance. I will share with you guys a link in the chat window later. There is this company, there is this startup in the US called Extra. Extra is now thinking they're working with NVIDIA and deploying an AI server directly in your home. Again, this presents a completely different problem to the network engineer, because your enterprise network and connectivity paths are not the same as your FTTH or your FTTX path, right? Because FTTX meaning you have fiber to the building, you have fiber to the home, you have fiber to the antenna, you have fiber to the office. So if you look at Extra, they are deploying 1 gigawatt capacity across 1,000 homes, or even more than 1,000 homes, in order for you to be able to achieve that 1 gigawatt capacity. And it changes completely the FTTH network architecture, because FTTH network architecture has always been asymmetrical. And in order for you to do active load balancing, you need to move it to an export network where you need to have symmetrical upload and download speeds, and at the same time, where there may be houses which are not utilizing their complete load requirement for electricity, then you need to be able to orchestrate and synchronize and divert all of your compute and your connectivity into that particular house or houses. So you see that AI can help you to orchestrate your load balance, right? Any questions here so far?
Yeah, so far nothing much from the floor, being quiet. But however, I think that what Mr. Haslan would like to share, right, with this shift of AI or even the data center mega project plan in Malaysia, there is a lot of opportunities is going to be happen on this near future or maybe these few years. So of course, feel free to share your question or your thought to Mr. Haslan. Then definitely we'll try to address it. So, Mr. Hassan, I think we have another 10 minutes. Maybe that you can wrap up from your side. Then maybe I can be to do the summary at the end of the sections.
Okay, sure. Thanks. I'm coming to the end of my slides. So I've just dropped the link to Extra into the chat window. So when you guys have the time, read up on and see what Extra AI is about. What I've already shared earlier was power consumption per rack, and of course, in the past you had O365, you had M365, depending on which type of enterprise server enterprise customer you were. Now you see it bundled with Bing. On Copilot, you see it even on your O365 enterprise software. You have Copilot. You have I think Cloud also now, as well as ChatGPT, which were incidentally Microsoft invested in them, and Microsoft changed their network architecture from an enterprise network architecture to an Azure cloud infrastructure or cloud architecture. So it's also important for you to do your certifications. I know on a similar parallel path, AWS and Google have their own, but again, depending on where do you see yourself, it's important because there are only subtle changes between each certification. And if you want to know more about the courses that are available, you can reach out to InfoTrack. So I share with you some career tracks that you may consider. So if you have a desire to be a DC operations manager, this is already, I would say, on the highest hierarchy. You have the highest responsibility as well, because you need to make sure that your data center doesn't go down. And it helps for you to have foundational credentials, because you need to understand how to manage the mechanical, electrical, extra low voltage systems. And of course, as I mentioned, I'm sure most of you would have already got your ITIL certifications as well. But if you go down the layers to engineer or solutions architect level, these are the things that you can consider yourself in terms of where you see your career and the required certifications. Last but not least, so I just want to say that the future of high performance digital engineering is claimed by professionals who can bridge the gap between logical cloud code and physical plant power. So I started how I end how I started, understanding how you bridge the gap between the logical and the physical. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Haslan, for your fruitful sharing to our to our audience. And definitely, I believe that we are able to now know more or to be more ready for this particular shift of the, I would say, revolution, especially AI is coming here. So, to everyone who joining us, right, actually, just a recap that Mr. Haslan tried to share with you is the world is changing whether you are ready or not, especially when this AI. And you can see that based on the news has been sharing in the market, more and more people has been laid off. It's not because that they are not doing their job best, it's just that they are not fast enough to get ready of the changes. Okay, so that's a definitely why that today we have this sharing. You can see that today's sharing based on previous webinar we've created from InfoTrack to the floor, right? Is last time we'll be more focusing on a certain certification, a certain skill. For example, maybe there's a new professional cert from PMI, or maybe there's a certain platform has been launched. So we'll invite the speaker to share on that. However, for today's sharing from Mr. Haslan, right, it's really nothing to do on any specific certification or roadmap. In fact, it's more relevant on the sharing of what is happening in the world right now. No doubt, InfoTrack has been in this market for 30 years already. We got multiples of principles that authorize us to run their training. But the question is not so much on what do I have, is what do you need for the future years. So that's why that feel free to reach out to our salesperson or even to us that tell us your plan, tell us your challenges. Then we will see what is the right pathway for you to get ready for this revolution, especially Microsoft, AWS, Google has been setting up so many offices at their HQ in Malaysia already. Maybe Johor project on some data center, even Elmina on Google data center that's ongoing right now. Definitely, there is more and more opportunities that will launch to you. So I have just shared my screen over here that you can see that these are the principles that actually that authorize us to run the training for them. At the same time, you also see a Google review QR. So I will be pretty appreciate that you all can help me to share your thought to us what do you think about today webinar? Then from there, you will help us to pretty much to be giving more improvement for the near futures. So do reach out to us if let's say you need some more information about data center related job opportunity. For example, like what Mr. Hassan has been shared, for example, like Microsoft Azure, Microsoft Server, or even M365, or even that project management. In fact, we are so lucky that we work with a few project managers, trainers. They are actively involved in Microsoft project right now in Johor. That they are one of the appointed PMO in sitting in their office. Or even that not only hard skill talking about cloud or Azure training. At the same time, we also do not forget about soft skill. Soft skill, what I meant by soft skill for IT team. For examples like business analysis. I think business analysis is one of the role that AI will not able to take over one, because no doubt AI are able to create the report, the dashboard, the analyze report based to us very fast. However, the key of business analysis basically is our own brain compared to the AI brain. So that is another role that may not able to, I would say, replace. Or even ITIL. I think one of the slides that Mr. Hassan has shared just now, right? Don't forget ITIL. Even though ITIL is already old, but old doesn't mean doesn't good. It's older, oldie, but it's still a very good dish for us as an ITIL. And the launch of ITIL 5 for this year in February, we can see that ITIL also started to change or shift their focus toward AI, toward flexibilities. Yeah, so that's why that where are you right now, or how can we assist you to embark your learning journey? Because InfoTrack has been in the market for 30 years already, and our mission for InfoTrack definitely is to send the right person to a right training. So how do we do that? We have to hear from you. We have to hear from you, right? What is your plan? What is your company plan? And let's see what we can do for you. That is our mission. At the same time, InfoTrack vision, our vision is to transform the knowledge that you learn during the training room, the knowledge that you learn during this webinar to become an action, to become a skill set you will use it. So feel free to join us in our next webinar, or even feel free to join our salesperson, reach out to our salesperson and tell them what is the planning of you. Because that every single program under InfoTrack is fully claimable under HRDC, where HRDC actually is one of the best entity in Malaysia that they force all the company to put aside a training budget. A training budget for all of you to upskill yourself compared to the new fresh grad university people. Because that HRDC, their objective is to upskill or even reskill the existing working force. Okay, so feel free to help me to scan the QR of the Google review. Let us know how can we improve the near future. And definitely today, I would like to take this opportunity to thanks to our speaker for today, Mr. Aslan. Thank you very much for your 60 minutes. Even though it's 60 minutes, but definitely I hear a lot of things from you. And hopefully the next round we can have a face-to-face workshop at our place that we would like to invite you to our center or to Malaysia over here. Thank you very much,
Thank
Mr.
you so
Haslan.
much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
For the rest of the audience, thank you for joining us for today. And definitely next 2 months, we'll have another topic for webinar. Then we will try to reach out to you and hopefully I can see you in the webinar or even in our training room. Thank you very much. Have a nice day or happy holiday for those that you need to take long leave for this coming weekend. Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks for your time. Bye-bye.